Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 2 of JV Analysts, emphasis on the J for junior. We're back here. It's March 24th. We are, after the first two rounds of March Madness, we're going into those, breaking them down, looking forward to the next few rounds, and taking our uninformed analysis to the masses.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the first couple of rounds. I know there wasn't a lot of upsets that a lot of people were about, but a lot of times I feel like that leads into really good second, third, fourth round of basketball. So that to me that proved to be pretty true going into the second round, and I'm excited for the matchups to come. So been a lot of fun for me. So. I don't know
Definitely.
about
Yeah,
you,
still
but
some,
I sat for 12 and a half hours on my couch on Thursday. So,
I think most of the nation did. So.
yeah.
uh, but yeah, I mean, great games. You didn't have necessarily the outcomes of prior years as far as Cinderella runs, things like that. But we watched anyways, So what can you say about that? But yeah, so maybe we should just go through a couple of the games and maybe just teams individually and what some takeaways are from those. Do you have any in particular you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, for me also, I was kind of keeping an eye on conferences, looking at the different conferences. I know the SEC having 14 teams make it was a big storyline. And then when this five of the six SEC teams that had losing conference records lost, people were saying, SEC was overrated and didn't deserve to be there. To me, yeah, the lower seeded teams a lot of times lose. I don't really feel like that's that big of a surprise. Um, but like I wouldn't have been mad if an Indiana or other teams would have gotten in. But yeah, I'm really curious with the SEC to see what they look like going forward. We got a little taste of them with some more formidable opponents in the second round. Um, and obviously the stronger SEC teams are there still, but I'm looking forward to them from here on out, kind of seeing how these top SEC teams hold their own. Teams like Auburn are kind of limping to the finish line a little bit. Alabama, I don't know what to make of them. Um, I feel like on a good night they can beat any team in the nation. They beat Auburn when Auburn was doing really well on their home court. Um,
Or even like an
and
Ole Miss against a Michigan State, like
yeah,
not necessarily one of the ones you take to the finals, but against another conference, see how they fare there.
Yeah, I'm looking to see how they fare, especially these number one seeds. Florida had a tough matchup, and Auburn did too. But yeah, specifically Auburn, I'm kind of curious, and Alabama, how they do because they're winning games, but I'm just not always sold on them. In Alabama, like I said, on a good night they beat anybody. On a bad night, I don't know, and they're going against a BYU team that's red hot. They got people buying into their roles, so it should be interesting to see there.
Mhm. I agree. Speaking of conferences, you've got SEC, which is just loaded with volume, right? You got 14 teams make it. I don't know, was it like seven are making it to the Sweet 16?
I
So
believe so. Yeah.
had a tough first round. I mean, ratio wise, but then they've kind of made uh regained some trust in the round of 32. And then you've got the Big Ten on the other hand, didn't have quite as many teams make it, but they started the tournament, 10-0. So and then versely they did do so hot in the second round. So just interesting, yeah, those conference dynamics.
Yeah, I feel like the Big Ten for me, not. Uh, I don't know how hot of a take this is, but I don't think that they're very top heavy. I think they're a deep conference, but I don't really see any of their teams that are left as major competitors. I'm not sure Michigan can get past Auburn. Michigan State, they just don't shoot the three ball well at all. I think they were under 30% this last game, which is bad. And that's not going to, when they start facing these one seeds and these top seeds, that's going to be harder and harder to do um, successfully. And then, Purdue, I don't really know what to make of them either. They've looked good this. I was not high on them coming into the tournament, but now I'm a little bit higher on them. But yeah, I don't necessarily see any of their teams as. I wouldn't put money on any of them being making it to the championship, but they certainly are deep. So I suspect SEC will perform well in these later rounds with Houston doing pretty well as well.
Yeah, it could very easily be three with kind of the top heavy SEC. It could very well be three out of the four final four being SEC. Whereas yeah, Big Ten, I don't really. Maybe one is going to sneak in, but it just doesn't seem like they're going to have the same numbers as the SEC.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Houston's an interesting look for me as well. I feel like talent wise, they don't have the big names, the big talent that a Duke has, that maybe Auburn has, but they are just so sound, especially on the defensive end. Even when Gonzaga was making a run on them, I didn't. Maybe I should have, but I didn't feel that nervous for Houston. I felt like uh, they're just so sound, and I love what Kelvin Sampson does with that team, and really outside of the team, I just think he's a great person. So, really curious to see how they match up against bigger teams, because Houston in the Big 12 this year, they face good talent, but not necessarily a ton of like top 10 talent
Right.
game over game. So that's another team keeping an eye. Obviously, I'm keeping an eye on every team at this point. There's only so many games left, but yeah, should be good. So
Yeah. Yeah, not a lot of we kind of touched on it before, not really Cinderella runs at this point. The lowest seed, the only double digit team is Arkansas at this point, which I don't know, you can really call it a Cinderella or an
yeah,
underdog. It's got kind of the pedigree. But it'll be interesting to keep an eye on them, especially their next game, Texas Tech. Not really a powerhouse, good team. Not a powerhouse that Arkansas could have some success with to make it even deeper. But yeah, interesting increase in parity it seems in the level.
yeah, I think so. I don't I don't necessarily. I think going forward, I don't have any of the underdogs really winning any of these games. Maybe Arkansas can do it, but I think I have all the higher seeded teams kind of winning from here on out. Um, I don't know, except for like I mentioned earlier, I don't know what to make of Michigan State. They're obviously a really good team, but yeah, just that 3 point shooting at sub 30, they're not going to do that every night, but that's a really hard number to win with. So yeah, I think the Cinderellas are, to me, everybody's freaking out about the Cinderellas and talking about the NIL thing, saying the NIL will put an end to the Cinderellas. First off, I don't think that's true. I think in a one game win scenario, any team can win, because basketball is a sport where if your rhythm just isn't there that day, the team's chemistry can just kind of be out of whack, and any team can win any given night. Um, and so, yeah, Cinderellas will still happen. I think there will be a bigger gap between the teams, but I also remember, like, I don't know. I feel like the later rounds are, for me as somebody who just enjoys sitting there and watching good basketball, these later rounds are just as exciting, if not more, because a lot of times when these double digit seed teams make it to the Sweet 16, you just know that they've got a timestamp on them. But here, with a bunch of high seeded teams and the low seeded teams that are in still, they have the talent to be good and make a run. So I don't know. I'm still really excited about it. I'm not really stressing over a lot of people like Stephen A. Which don't get me going on that dude. He said the sport will die if there's no more Cinderellas, and it's like, no, people like basketball.
Yeah, and I know me, like I was kind of looking back and I think I might have romanticized kind of previous years and some of these runs, and it seems like thinking back, like, oh man, every year we've got at least a 15 seed, an 11 seed, and a 9 seed in the, like the Sweet 16,
Yeah,
maybe even the Elite Eight. And it's really not the case. Like, maybe like there's one, yeah, generally, usually, maybe two, but it's not kind of all of these underdog stories that,
A lot of times
in
it is
my
teams
mind,
that
there are.
are like Arkansas,
Yeah.
that are good teams that just didn't have it
Mhm.
going early in the year,
Right.
and they can figure it out.
So I think there's definitely more parity. Like, I know this year, in the first round, there were only 7 lower seed wins, and then 2 of those were 9 seeds beating 8 seeds. So, like, really 50s. Um, and then the second round, there were 4 lower seed wins, and then one of those was a 5 beating a 4. So, um, really, the underdogs aren't, at least this year. I don't know if it's going to
Yeah,
continue, but they're not putting as much of a fight. But it's not as drastic as I think
yeah, and I
people
don't
might keep
think the
saying.
SEC is going to be this good every year. These big conferences are going to. There's going to be a gap. Really, to me, what I care about more than upsets, and not everybody's like this, obviously, especially people who don't watch any college basketball. I don't necessarily care about the double digit seeds. I care about fun games, which obviously the double digit seed teams making a run makes it fun, sure, but what I really want to make sure doesn't happen is that there's not these 30-point blowouts like a lot of these games were this year.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, there's a lot of times where I was just every game on was a blowout in the first round, and I was, what am I supposed to do here? I took work off for this.
Just as a tangent too, I was just thinking, like, how crazy is it that the SEC owns football, freaking baseball, softball, you name it, and they historically weren't like
Yeah.
as good at basketball, and then NIL comes around and they just decide, like, we're gonna take basketball too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious to see if it sustains because, uh, I mean, I know they have money thrown around for football and stuff, but like, do their alums have crazy amount of money? You know, uh,
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know, but
but then
the
like, wouldn't
one,
every school? Because people are saying BYU
yeah,
has like the richest NIL stuff in the country, and it's like that's. I don't think that's true. I'm sure Nike could put out $1 billion for North Carolina if they wanted to,
that's
but they
true.
they don't. It's just about
Yeah,
I don't know the right situation arising, having faith in the coach and everything like that. I don't know what all goes into these NIL deals, but uh, I'm definitely curious to see if how much the SEC can sustain that kind of skill.
especially with, and again, I have limited, like, knowledge about the goings on of NIL, but
Yeah,
down the pipeline, it sounds like there's going to be some sort of cap across all sports. And so let's say it's 30 million and you've got 30 million to spend on football, basketball, baseball, soccer. These SEC schools are not going to give up football. And so at
yeah.
that point,
But I
they're going to
think
have to
the
start cutting
cap
their.
is the school has to revenue share, but NIL deals are outside of that cap.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, because
Interesting.
that's like a company is putting money towards a certain player.
Yeah,
Uh,
that changes it then. I was under the
yeah,
assumption that you were kind of capped there, but
Yeah, I mean, if I'm correct, I think that's what it is, and obviously that's a different case scenario. But I, I imagine the revenue sharing from schools is more. I don't know. I'm because I think they have to spread it across all of the sports, like you're saying. So I wonder, are lower non-popular sports going to take a hit in college from it? I saw some mid-major reporter for basketball kind of talk about how these mid-major schools or even the smaller schools they want to have a good basketball program still with the revenue sharing, um, but they might have to take scholarships away from your cross country or your I don't know cricket or whatever these low
yeah.
revenue uh, sports are that they're not necessarily making big money on in the first place. So that's unfortunate to see,
Yeah.
um, but I don't imagine the school's gonna be like I don't know at a Georgia where you're paying people out the butt to go play football. Uh, I don't imagine that it's gonna be the biggest source of money that they're throwing at people. I'm sure it's the rich alum that are doing that for you.
Yeah, there's got to be like a solution. And it just, I don't know, whether it be, you know, a million required for each sport, and then you can kind of pick and choose from there, or whatever it may be. But It just
But you
feels like
can't
they need
really
to
do that across the
figure this
board
out.
though. So that's the thing. How do you
No.
because these are education institutions, they're not sports teams, so it's hard to require them to spend a certain amount of money.
Or I guess a better way would be like scholarship slots maybe where you need, yeah, maybe not a dollar amount, but let's say your swim team needs 12 scholarship athletes, full scholarship at any given time. And then if you want to compete higher level at that sport, you can pump a little bit more money into it and increase like some sort of per diem or whatever, however they pay their athletes.
Yeah,
But
the pushback to that would be if you were requiring a school to pay a certain amount in scholarships or in cold hard cash, uh, just axe the program,
yeah,
because swimming's if you're requiring 12 scholarships, which end up being X amount of revenue per uh, year, and you're not driving that with the swimming TV contract that you have, that just shows up on ESPN Plus only, and barely that.
but do these sports make money anyways? Like,
I have no clue. I just know I tuned into the swimming
yeah.
one the other day. I'm assuming they you know, I don't know what the numbers are getting thrown around there, but
Well, we
uh,
went to the college tennis championships, and there were
oh
about four
yeah,
people in the stands. So I
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're making it off TV. So I also don't know what the incentives for colleges are in the first place to have all these smaller sports.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know if it was goodwill in the start, but now that money's involved in the sport a little bit more, they're gonna kick them to the curb. I don't know, but
yeah.
it'll be interesting. Regardless, there needs to be more, and we will see more, I think, in the future. Uh, I don't know how to put it. I guess they'll build out the structure of these NIL situations better because you get people who like the what was it, University of New Mexico or something, New Mexico State in football. The quarterback just bailed because he said he didn't get the money he wanted, but then the school's like, oh, we paid him what we promised, and so like there's just all these like random things. I think it needs to be more contractual. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know what goes into these contracts. Maybe it already is, and that guy just didn't fulfill it. But um, it does feel a little bit like the Wild West right now. It's also going to be interesting to see what kind of schools emerge. Your SMU alum have crazy money. I wouldn't be shocked if they have, both their teams did really well, or both basketball and football, I should say, did really well in their respective sports this year. Is that going to be sustained? Is there going to be others like, I don't know, Stanford grads might have a lot of money. Obviously, BYU's had a little good year in both of these sports. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what other risers we have in this NIL era.
And not just like schools, but individuals. I know, going to school like sports management was always kind of
Yeah, for
alluring,
sure.
but you don't see a path in sight because it's like I'm not going to go straight out of college to work for the Cowboys. So how am I going to get there? But with all these schools coming up, there's going to be hundreds of schools that need some sort of general management, any number of like, yeah, sports management roles, as well as the athletes need representation. Even coming out of high school, like even there's got to be some sort of high school college liaison. Like the roles are going to be just going to blow up, I think, and so it'd be interesting, the opportunities of that nature.
Yeah, it will be. I definitely agree there. I think this college sports market has opened up career-wise a lot of different avenues for people to take, um, which, yeah, like you said, somebody's doing rec management major or whatever the major is called. You kind of like, oh, he's gonna run a YMCA or something like that. But now there's a lot of really really promising degrees, especially if you're willing to go, get a law degree or something. You can manage these contracts and stuff like that. Um, Yeah, so interesting stuff. NIL, I think it's going to be a hot topic for a long time, but um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes from here. Um, you have any teams that you're high on after the first two weekends?
I feel like Florida's hard because they haven't had the biggest wins, but I feel like there's another level. Like I have a hard time. Kind of one of my favorite players of the weekend was Walter Clayton Jr., who numbers wise wasn't quite there as far as like against some of the other players in the tournament, but when they needed him against who was that? And shoot, uh, who'd Florida play last?
I think it was. Oh, I don't want to misspeak either. Actually,
Yeah.
was it? No,
Oh, UConn. Yeah, UConn.
UConn. Yeah,
Tight game going into the stretch, and then he just turned it on. So I think Florida has
his
the
little
capability.
sidestep three was
Yeah.
that one got me out of my chair.
Um, Florida's got the ability to turn it to another level, I think. So it'll be interesting to watch, see what they do going forward. They've got Maryland next, who's also coming off of a big win as far as close, and then see who's got more momentum going there.
Yeah, should be good. I'll tell you one player. I watched the Oklahoma game. I hadn't watched a ton of them. I kept an eye on this Fears kid. I think Jeremiah is his first name because I think he's supposed to go pretty early in the draft, and I was really impressed with him. I felt like he's. I would not be scared if my team drafted him, regardless of what team I was. I think he can play within a system really well. He's good with the ball in his hand, but he's not like a ball has to be in his hand for 90% of the possession type player. Um, and he's like sneaky quick and good passer as well. So I feel like he'd complement a lot of offenses really well. I was hoping Oklahoma won just because I really wanted to watch more of him. I was just really impressed with him. And then also the John Tanji with Wisconsin. Um,
Big game.
yeah, big game at 37 points. You didn't have a good feeling if you're. I was rooting for BYU. If you're rooting for BYU there, didn't have a good feeling as he dribbled the ball down the court. But
Yeah,
um,
he had his way and did not have a single answer for him. It
yeah,
was
it
crazy.
it was. I was surprised he didn't get the shot he wanted there, which kind of leads me into one thing that just blows my mind in collegiate basketball is the end of game situation. It's I mostly had watched or NBA, specifically the Mavs, and late game situation. Obviously, with Luka and Kyrie, you're spoiled a little bit, but like, not only are they not do they not make last or clutch shots in the last 2 minutes, I feel like the game is significantly more panicked, and the shot selection is bad, and you'll get this combination of some people who don't know what to do with the ball in their hand and some people who are clearly wanting the ball, but they shouldn't have the ball. They want to shoot. They don't have the opportunity to shoot. It doesn't come within the flow. Um, they just take an off the bounce contested three or contested midi. No reason for it. It happens a shocking amount of time. What game was this? There's too many games that are all bleeding together in my mind. It was a first round game, I think. And I can't remember who it was. Dang it! But anyways, they the team was down one, and they took it down the court. The team had a timeout. They opted not to take that timeout and drop a play with there was 9 seconds left. They dribbled it down. The dude did a he was doubled at the elbow of the 3 point line. Did a three, just like a kind of step back three shot, and absolute dud. And I'm like, why not take the timeout? Why force that doubled shot? You still have 4 seconds on the clock. So definitely a standout thing when you watch college ball is like in these high tense moments in the last 3 minutes of a playoff game, the IQ is just so different from in the NBA.
Yeah, that's really significant for me too when I'm watching it, and I feel like there might be a couple factors. IQ definitely being one, and just experience, but also like college, you're not there yet. You're not at the end goal, so you're like trying to be that guy, and you're trying to like show this is like who I can be
And you
when at the
envision,
eight.
you get there by thinking you're the dude.
Exactly. Everyone is the dude on like you've got eight the dudes on a team on a
Yeah.
roster. And so and that leads me to the other point is like NBA, you've got pretty much an established hierarchy. You've got a one guy, a two guy, a three guy, hopefully, if you're, a solid contender team. Mavs, you've got if Luka can get a good look, he's taking the shot. Kyrie next, if he can get a good shot, sweet. And then it's kind of like you don't
And the,
you
the
know your
gravity
role.
there makes it so the other players, the play isn't necessarily for those other players, but the gravity is so much on Luka and Kyrie that it sets up the other players. And the other
Yeah.
players aren't demanding the ball. They know that the right play is going to be made.
Right. They know what their role is if they end up with the ball with 9 seconds to go. Like Daniel Gafford's not going to grab the ball, be a hero, get jack up a three. He's going to get it to where it needs to go. And so you've got a combination of ego, which I'm not saying there's not ego in the NBA because there for sure is,
Oh,
but
absolutely, yeah.
um, it's just a different ego of kind of where you're trying to get versus where you are, and
But
yeah, it's
you talk about ego in the NBA. There absolutely is ego, but ego also it has destroyed a ton of careers. Uh, there's a lot of players that are very, very talented scorers that I'm not that high on leaving college. Uh, Not that they can't find success, but you got to be in the right situation if you can't play within the flow of offense. A lot of the guys getting drafted early rounds don't make it because when they're a little kid, they were the man. When they're in high school, they're the man. When they're in college, they're the man. You're getting 20 points per game since you're 16 or whenever. Uh, and if you can't buy into the fact that the ball's not going to be in your hand, and your job is to make your Kevin Durant's, your LeBron James's, your Luca Kyrie's, your job is to make them more successful, and in turn, they're going to make you more successful. But if you're trying to have the ball in your hand and play hero ball in the NBA, you're out of the league. And there's been several um, long-time players in the NBA, long-time role players, I should say, that comment on that. I know that I can't remember this. I can't remember this dude's name, but he played on the Bulls for a while. I know Jeff Teague has talked about it towards that last end of his career, and that's is why I love Derek Lively when he was coming in the league. Is uh, Derek Lively came in his first interview, he was like, "I'm just here to make Luka better," and Derek Lively had an amazing rookie season and made Luka better, and in turn, he was, in my view, almost the second most valuable player on that Mavs team that ran to the finals last year. But then you get other players that want to play hero ball, and then they'll go play in the G League and play. They'll drop 30 in the G League, but then when they come to the league, they can't do anything because they just don't have the off-ball skills, the pick and roll skills that all these things that make the primary ball handler good. You're not coming into the league unless you go to the Hornets or something and gonna be the main scorer on a team. It's just that there's too much talent in the NBA. So that's why I'm high on players like Jeremiah Fears, that Oklahoma player I was talking about, is because I feel like you can drop him in and he's gonna be successful off ball. When he gets the ball, he's not gonna play hero ball. He can still set others up and play within his role, maybe off the bench too. So
do you think that's why certain teams have success just because they have the culture of like in college, where they're able to cultivate that a little better. It's hard with young men, like especially it just feels like the culture's getting a little, I don't know,
yeah,
different. It's
when you
just
throw
different.
millions of dollars in these
Yeah.
kids, any kid really, but also kids who grew up poor, it's
Mhm.
gonna, you feel the pressure of trying to say, hey, I'm worth this $1 million you just threw my way.
Yeah.
I would say so. That's why I think UConn has been successful. They've had good talent, but like this year, even their good players, I'm less from a talent perspective impressed with them. But just they're so well coached. Even though Dan Hurley's I see your note here, love or hate Dan Hurley. It's both. I both love the guy, and I'm like, dude, you are such a douchebag. Just shut your mouth. Uh, but whenever I watch UConn, like they just know what they're doing. There's always good rotation. They just feel like they're on the same page in a lot of cases. Um, and that's the same, BYU's rise, I feel like late in the year was because they really bought into their roles. You have Mawat Mag, who every game he picks their best ball player, the other team's best ball handler up from full court. Um, and then he doesn't demand the ball on offense. In fact, he's one of the few players when the ball hits his hand in offense, that it's not staying there long. And so, yeah, I do think the talent or the humility, the buy into the team makes a big difference in the college game as well. So,
And that makes it transferable to NBA, I'm sure. Like I haven't really paid attention to the couple like the rookie and sophomore seasons of some of these UConn players coming out past couple of years, but I'm sure it's gotta be impressive to coaches and teams coming in that you can buy into a system without feeling like you're have to be, a guy. But
yeah, and you look at what's this white dude on the Lakers, blanking on his name. Um, you know who I'm talking about? Frick. Uh,
Reeves,
what was that? Yeah, Reeves. He didn't get drafted, but he said a team did say they wanted to draft him in the second round, but he said don't draft me because he had a list of 5 teams that he wanted to go to because he felt like he could fit in. And I just really like that approach and that he's not just like, yeah, I have to get drafted because I'm a good basketball player, but he knew if I want a second contract, which is the hardest thing for a lot of these guys getting drafted, I got to find a place where I fit and that I can buy into my role and be successful in my role. So I definitely think it translates to the NBA, but you also have to get lucky that you don't get drafted to the Wizards, where there's no direction. So
yeah, 100%.
So
what are some just kind of not analytical highlights, but just some things from the tournament that like stood out? Like for me, I couldn't stop looking at Richie Saunders Hickey. I can't be the only one that saw that. But
oh no, I think the guy who got ejected also had one, but it was a couple days old, so it was fading.
There you go. Hopefully not from each other, but you never know.
He's just getting pumped for the game. That's all it is.
Yeah, hey, you can't hate it. It's yeah. And then also Maryland travel. Jeez Louise. Like I've heard the whole gather step. I don't buy it. I don't think travel's
I think
real.
it is a travel and it should be a travel, but I think they're right for not calling it in that situation because they don't call it in the normal game situation.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
I'm not a big fan of when people say you can't call a foul in end game situation. It's like, okay, well then I'm definitely going to foul the guy shooting, because you're not going to call it. I think the end game moment should be called the same as the rest of the game. If you don't want a bummer moment, then don't have a bummer moment and foul person, But yeah, I don't think. I actually, the next game I was watching, I kept an eye out for it, and I saw it a couple times that people take 3 steps going to the layup. It's dumb, but it happens. So I think it would have been unfair to call that. If that happens 3/4 way through the game, they wouldn't have called it either. So should be a travel, but just based on basketball in the last 30 years, it's not a travel. So
yeah, I can see that. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not been an overtime game yet, right?
I don't think there has been.
There's been some close ones. Maryland was close. Arizona's close. Florida close. Pretty decent amount within 6-7 points, but I don't think there's been an overtime game yet, which is a bit of a bummer. But
also sometimes in these late night situations,
yeah,
can't hate it too much.
Luckily, I'm a time
just
zone
have
after you, so
a good finish at the reel at during regulation and call it good there.
Yeah, that's true.
Although, did Texas Xavier go to overtime in the first 4?
I didn't think so, but did they?
I don't know.
No.
It didn't.
86-80 regulation.
Oh, okay, never mind. My bad. So yeah, overall great weekend of hoops. I think I'm really pumped up for the matchups. I'm really curious to see if they change the way the transfer portal is working, which opened today. I don't know if you saw that. And some teams are. So there's a guy on Michigan who entered the transfer portal and he played like 20 minutes or something this last
Mhm.
game. And so that will need to be amended. I don't know if he's still allowed to play or not. And also, it should just be that's like free agency opening during the playoffs for the NBA or something. It just doesn't make sense at all. So that'll need to change. Curious to see where some of these players end up and who gets ready for the next year.
All right. Top matchup you're looking forward to for the next round.
Yeah. Glance at the schedule here. Uh, I would say, ooh, I mean, there's a lot that I'm curious about. Kentucky looked good. I'm curious to see the Tennessee matchup there. Um, I think if Alabama and BYU are both hitting shots, that could be game of the year. They are both two of the highest offensive uh, scoring teams. Bama is insane pace. And so that one could be a lot of fun. Could get two teams scoring over 100 there, honestly. So and then the Tech Arkansas game I'm curious about as well. I think I'll go Kentucky Tennessee, although it doesn't feel right to just choose a SEC matchup. So, but yeah, looking forward to all of them. Those are a couple that stand out though. How about you?
Yeah, I think most intrigued by Arkansas, Texas Tech. Just curious what that's going to show everybody. But most excited for it, I'd probably say Maryland, Florida. Two big wins for, well, not big wins again, but just close wins, a lot of momentum. I think Florida's got another gear, but we'll see if they don't hit that gear, there's a good chance Maryland knocks them off. So that's kind of the one I'm most
Yeah, I
excited
could
for.
see that game going either way. I think I have Florida winning it, but we'll see. We'll see. So awesome. Well,
Anyways,
I sorry, what were you saying? Did you have
no,
something
go
there?
for it.
I was just
No.
gonna say I think that's a good roundup of what's happened. I think we are looking forward to the games this week. We'll have a lot to talk about next week. So yeah, any closing words or things you want to talk about before we hop off here?
Just one more thing. Forgot to mention, probably the biggest event of the weekend, but I'm sure everybody already knows that there's a new rookie league champion at the Utah Olympic Oval, the Wolfpack, Mighty Wolfpack. So
I don't
shout
even
out
know
to
what that
them.
means.
It's the team I won, the beer league championship.
Oh,
But
okay.
everybody
I
already knows
forgot.
about that.
We're
So
talking about a rec
good
league.
news.
I forgot I'm talking to a rec league champion here for
Champion,
hockey.
yeah, rookie league at the Utah Olympic
Royalty here.
Oval.
I
So.
completely spaced that. We should have brought that up from the jump. That's
Well, I just assumed everybody already knew. It's kind of old news at this point, but yeah. Anyways, that's it for me.
there it
Um,
is.
good
Until
talking.
next time.
See y'all.
Peace.